This is a continuation of yesterday's conversation around theology and disability from an interfaith, multi-faith perspective. And I just want to give a kind of a brief introduction to our speakers. We read their whole bios yesterday. Can you still hear me okay? Okay, cool. Yeah, so I'll start out, and then we'll also give a quick visual description as well. But I'll start out with Darla Schumm. Darla is an incredible scholar, disability activist, someone with lived disability experience, and has written the book. Also, she did her PhD in religion at Vanderbilt University. And she has written kind of the seminal text on disability and world religions, an introduction, a religious studies perspective, and interfaith perspective on disability and religion. And Dr. Schumm is going to be talking to us about the Buddhist perspective, though she is not a practitioner herself, has tremendous wealth of knowledge there. Our other presenter, who is joining us virtually, is Harshada Rajani, and Harshada comes to us from Charlotte, North Carolina, and is a freelance writer and co-founder of the We Win nonprofit. And Harshada has experienced a stroke when she was 23. After completing her bachelor's from Duke University, she was in a medical school program and had full body paralyzation, and has been working to both have rehabilitation for herself, and has recently, in the last couple years, regained speech. So we're very excited to have her be a speaker today, and has really found tremendous power in writing, and has had her writing featured all over the country, and she is really committed to accessibility within the South Asian Desi community, and is also grew up in the Hindu tradition. To my right is my wonderful, wonderful boss, Shelly Christenson. She's the Senior Faith Inclusion and Belonging Director at Respectability. She's had over 20 plus years in Jewish disability inclusion work. She has a fantastic book called From Longing to Belonging, an accessible guide to worship. Did I say that right?
It's From Longing to Belonging, a practical guide to including people with disabilities and mental health conditions in your faith community.
Thank you. Memorization is not my strong suit. It's a fantastic book. It's a really excellent practical guide to that. And Shelly is also the co-founder and continued leader of JDAME, Jewish Disability Awareness and Inclusion Month, which happens every February. We're very excited to hopefully bring that to other religious traditions as well moving forward this year. We're really excited. And Tom is also, I'll talk about myself in a minute, but Tom is ordained in the Disciples of Christ tradition. He is the executive director of Faith Inclusion Network, which is also a national nonprofit working in the same space. Tom has lived experience with disability, as does Shelly. All the panelists, actually, myself included, have lived experience with disability, which is really, really special for having these conversations, because nothing about us without us. And Tom has worked at special education space for 25 years in the Texas public education system, and is worked at Share for a number of years. And so he's bringing a wealth of life experience to this conversation and talking on the Christian tradition. And lastly, myself. And after this, I'll give a visual description. We can all go around as panelists to do that. My name is Ben Bond. My pronouns are he, they. I am the Faith, Inclusion, and Belonging Associate at Respectability with Shelly, which I'm so grateful for. I'm ordained in the Christian Church Disciples of Christ, similar to Tom, which we joyfully found out while we were planning this, so that's really lovely. It's a mainline progressive Protestant denomination. I personally have lived experience with disability, both neurodiversity and physical disability, and I got my start doing activism at student organizing at Yale Divinity School, and then also doing other nonprofit work. So, with that, I'll give myself a brief visual description and pass it around. I am a young, white, male-presenting person with brown hair, brown beard, and brown glasses, wearing a purple button-up shirt and green pants. And I will pass it to the folks on screen to give a visual description of themselves.
I'm Harshada, Rajani. I'm an Indian female with long, straight, black hair and silver, tiny earrings.
Good afternoon, everyone from cool, humid-free Virginia. I know you all wish you were here. I'm Darla. I am a white, probably, if I'm honest, middle-aged looking woman with short brown hair cut in a bob, brown eyes. I'm wearing a light pink kind of sweater with a white, pink, and blue shirt underneath, pink earrings, and a silver necklace today. I'm happy to be with you all.
Thank you so much, Darla. You can pass it to Shelly and Tom.
Hi, I'm Shelly, and I am a white female with curly brown hair, about shoulder length, and I have brown eyes. I'm wearing purple glasses today, and I have on a pink dress with some olive green and turquoise flowers on it, tiny flowers, and I'm wearing a white sweater. Also wearing my name badge, that says Shelly Christenson. And I'm wearing some really cool gold earrings with moonstones hanging from the bottom.
I'm Tom, and I am a white male with white hair, mostly white and gray. I wear glasses. I'm wearing a purple shirt that has pinstripes on it and gray pants. I think that's about it.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Shelly. Thank you, Darla. And thank you, Harshada. I should also mention we have a panelist that was on the program who was unable to be with us kind of last minute. So Imam, Nadim, Bashir will be, God willing, inshallah, be able to join us via a video pre-recorded he set based on the questions we're asking today. And that will be based on whether we can get the tech together. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, thank you all for sharing that. So I kind of wanted to begin this conversation kind of taking us through the journey of what challenges and obstacles we face as a disability community within our religious traditions, and then eventually will take us towards models of positive or affirming disability experiences. So yeah, the first question I have is, what are some obstacles and challenges that disabled people face in the practice of the traditions we're speaking on today? And I'll offer up to the folks online to answer first if they want to give it a shot.
Enter. Harshada, did you want to go first?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Okay, sorry. Yeah, so I get, maybe Ben, I can ask you a quick question. Are most of the folks at the workshop today people who were there yesterday?
Yeah, I would say so. We had a different crowd because of a community day we had, but the folks that are here are the folks that have been here, except for maybe a couple people.
Okay. So not a lot of need to go over some of the basics that we talked about yesterday. I will say a little bit about just the practice of Buddhism more generally, because as a non-theistic tradition, also not centered around a single type or form of worship like a lot of the monotheistic religions are. The practice of Buddhism can be quite different or unfamiliar, particularly to a group of Westerners who may or may not be used to it. The one thing that probably most of us all know about Buddhism is that the main practice is one of meditation. So, and meditation, of course, has become very popular in Western culture in the past several decades. Some of us probably do practice a form of Buddhist meditation.
Join the meeting.
Whoops, sorry. Some of us probably think we do, but don't. And others of us practice our own type of medication. The thing about meditation, the thing about Buddhism that is so wonderful in many ways is that there is no prescription about how to practice or how to meditate. So for the Buddhist practitioner, able-bodied or disabled, meditation can be a very personal, individual experience, and the stereotypical image that many of us have about Buddhist meditation is that we fold our bodies into a pretzel and sit in the lotus position and meditate. So obviously for many bodies, again, disabled or not, that can be quite a challenging pose. I don't have mobility issues, but my legs just don't bend in that way anymore. But that's not required. To meditate is to be still and quiet and to empty one's mind of distracting thoughts. And that's really at the and to breathe. You always have to remember to breathe. And so at a most basic level, that's what the main practice of Buddhism is. There's also the Eightfold Path, which I mentioned yesterday as one of the Four Noble Truths. And the Eightfold Path is the way to eliminate suffering, which is one of the goals of Buddhism. So to eliminate suffering, to reach enlightenment by understanding the true nature of reality. But the Eightfold Path, again, is really a way of being, thinking, and acting in the world that can be done in any variety of bodies. So I'll stop there and maybe say a little more about the Eightfold Path later, but I want to give my co-participants plenty of time to respond.
So with Hinduism, I think the biggest barrier is just coming to terms with some of the beliefs, like karma, realizing that it's God's will, and that's sometimes really hard to do. But also, on the other side of that, I think this is more cultural than it is religious. but Indian Americans generally live by this notion and have this pressure to be the model minority and to overcome adversity and succeed. And I think that pressure is put onto visibly disabled people from the community. For example, when I go to the temple, I get concerned. Is everyone staring at me? Do they think I'm here to pray for a cure so I can overcome my adversity? So I think there's a couple problems with getting yourself okay with religion itself. But like Darla said about Buddhism, I think being a Hindu is a very singular process too. Like you don't need to go to the temple. You don't need to be with other people. We believe that God is everywhere. And I think that kind of alleviates any societal pressure.
Thank you so much to both of you. I was actually just having a conversation with a colleague here yesterday about how many disabled folks can feel similar into that model minority status can sometimes be placed upon disabled people in the sense that it's always this, well, we've aspired to become abled and we've mastered or conquered our disabilities instead of them having inherent worth and the space for celebration. So I really appreciate you highlighting that intersection, Harshada, and to Darla as well. I've done a lot of Buddhist meditation, and it's, as someone with a physical disability, I'm very grateful for their accommodations. Access note for our tech folks, if we could set the captions on Zoom on for automatic captioning, that'd be really helpful. And on that, I'll pass it to Shelly and Tom on barriers to and obstacles for disabled faiths in the tradition that you represent. Also, if you don't want to talk on this particular question, that's okay as well.
I think one of the things that Hans said this morning was very profound, and I'm paraphrasing, but he said people with disabilities are hurt more by other people's attitudes than the disability itself, and I think that's really true. I think when we think about the challenges and obstacles, a lot of it has been, I think, fear of the unknown, and also the fact that this medical model just kind of pervades everything. It's kind of focuses on deficits. I have a good friend that thought she was autistic, and so she took some tests at the age of 40 and found out she had that diagnosis. And the diagnosis wasn't the harmful thing. The harmful thing was all the negative indications that she had autism. So it's the focus on the deficits, I think, that is really an obstacle. I think many people think, well, I don't know if I could handle that. Don't know if I could handle life with a disability, and so how can they do what I do? I ran into that personally, having epilepsy, trying to become ordained in the Methodist Church, and I don't hold it against the Methodist Church at the time. It was just the time, basically, in the late 70s, early 80s. And so I couldn't drive because of the epilepsy, and that was one of the issues is how can you be a minister if you can't drive and get around? And a lot of people couldn't imagine doing that. And so, a lot of the difficulties come when we focus on deficits. And we're trying to start a special needs ministry at our church at home. And I guess it was the way I was raised as a special ed teacher. You know, when we think of somebody with special needs, I automatically think, what is it that they can't do? And we're trying to put this square into a circle. And sometimes it just doesn't work, and so we stop. And so that, you know, we need to focus more on what people can do and what their gifts are, and how we can incorporate those into church or into a mosque or a synagogue. But I really think that fear and just focusing on the deficits are some of the main issues that lead us down a path of well, we can't do this. This is an impossible task, when it really is a lot easier than you might think. And you know, churches, faith communities, just a lot of times just don't know how to go about doing this in a healthy way.
I'll say to that, you know else who didn't have a car and couldn't drive? Jesus.
Oh.
So you're in good company.
This was all before Uber.
It's all before Uber, as Shelly says, yeah. Also, another access note, tech folks let me know that if we did captioning on this screen, it would double caption for folks online. So if you do need captioning, please, if you have a device that you'd like to access Zoom that way, the captioning will be provided there. Anyway, that's my very fast thing. Just gonna allow Shelly to answer this question as well, and Shelly can transition us into actions that faith communities can take to aspire towards and live into disability justice.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, everyone. This is, well, it comes down to one thing, and that is being human. Obstacles. I love talking about obstacles because they're so fun to break down. In congregation land, typically one thinks, oh, well, we don't have large print books, or we can't afford an ASL interpreter, or we don't have a ramp, it's too expensive to put in, kind of the architectural things. Oh, well, we have an accessible bathroom. Forget that it's on the 3rd floor, and there's no elevator, and there's no way to get the door open, but we do have an accessible restroom upstairs. These are all true things. These are true things that I've encountered. There's also the communication obstacles. And even the lighting. If somebody can't see because the lighting's too dark, they can't follow the prayer book, that's just another thing. These are things that congregations particularly don't think of. But the most pervasive obstacle of all, attitudes. And attitudes are what prompt stigma, and another term, 2 terms for stigma, prejudice and discrimination. And it's looking at people with disabilities as a separate class of people, as a lump sum of people, and saying we, who is we? The powers, the congregational powers, we cannot have them here. If we make one accommodation for somebody, the floodgates are going to open up and everybody else is going to want to come in. Or,
God forbid.
yeah, we don't have those people here. Somebody said that to me one time. They said, what a great job you're doing, and this is great, but we don't have those people here. And I said, do you ever wonder why those people are not there? It really takes deep reflection on the part of an organization to look inside and consider what are the practices, what are the policies, what's the inherent belief here? Do you believe you can't make any changes to the physical plant or provide interpretation, captioning, cart, things like that, because it's all about the money? Because if it's all about the money, that's an attitudinal issue too. That's a problem too. And so attitudes keep people out. They keep those people out. And yesterday I made the comment from HaYehudi HaKadosh, who said, good intentions alone, not followed by action, are without value, for it is the actions which make the intention so profound. So if a faith community starts in with, oh, we intend to, oh yes, we love those people, they need to swiftly get into action. And there's ways to organize. There's ways to make sure that a congregation is looking at their values, like a deep dive into the values, not just the leadership, but the entire congregation, and saying, who is a member, who belongs here? And when we change that conversation to belonging rather than inclusion, rather than disability, rather than mental health, rather than, you know all the terms that, the euphemistic terms that people use, it's really that genuine conversation. So just a couple of different things on that note. I strongly believe in relationships being the core of belonging. And this is not about a relationship where somebody who's in talks to somebody who's wanting to come in. This is about two people with shared interest, two people with something in common having a conversation. So I'm going to give you a quick example of this, how this works. Early on in my career, I went to visit someone in our community who had tried for 14 years to join a congregation and was unsuccessful. She was unsuccessful primarily because of attitudes and stigma and prejudice. She lives with cerebral palsy. She uses a wheelchair, and it's sometimes hard for people to understand what she's saying, and nobody ever said, can we, let me clarify. Let's talk about, can you repeat? Whatever that beautiful communication is between people. And so for 14 years, she struggled to find a place, and that was so important to her. So by the time I met her, I had been working in the Minneapolis Jewish community for just a few months. And I went to her house, and she said, her apartment, she said, nobody Jewish has ever been to my home. I mean, think about what happens in your homes. Think about friendships. Think about dinners. Think about getting together. And she said, you're the first Jewish person in my home. And we talked, and I said, please tell me, what's important to you? What's important to you in your desire to be part of this community? And she said the words that I will never forget. I hope you will never forget them. And she said, all I've ever wanted is to belong. So what gives people a sense of belonging is why we have conversations and why we have relationships. I want to talk about Jewish Disability Awareness, Acceptance, and Inclusion Month, but I will do that after.
Absolutely. Thank you, Shelly. Yeah, so Shelly's giving us a great transition for our other panelists as well to talk about what actions that you feel can be taken in faith communities to make disability justice and inclusion happen. You can speak for your on the tradition you're speaking on, or more general terms, whatever you feel comfortable with. If you want to go first, Tom, we can switch it up and then have the folks online go.
Okay. One of the main things I think faith communities can do is to focus on the whole person and to look past the disability to see the person. And I don't mean just to ignore that disability and some of the challenges that comes with it, but a lot of times, as I said before, it comes with deficits. And we don't develop friendships by focusing on deficits. We don't introduce ourselves by our deficits, and nobody wants to be known by the struggles that they have. They want to be known as a person. And I think that's important for congregations to do, is to look past the challenges of the disability that they may not understand or know how to deal with, but look at that person, look at the person as a human being who has same interest and same needs as they do. I just think that that's extremely important in order to establish those relationships and friendships, and to be a caring congregation. As we look at our special needs ministry that we're trying to develop, the work of a lot of authors, and Barbara Newman has been really influential on us in the fact that she looks at a person with a disability and looks at their spiritual needs. What are their educational needs? What are their worship needs? What are their needs to serve and others? And so it looks at the spiritual needs of people with disabilities and plans for those, and on how to include them, how to give them opportunities to live in a congregation and a faith family, and just recognizes the whole person with a disability. And that's what we all want, I think, is to belong to a family that loves us and appreciates us. And I think that's one of the most important things, is to see the person and their needs, and not just their physical needs due to their disability, but just to see people as people, and to to have that love and acceptance. And that's when I've seen belonging really take place, is when people look past that disability and know the person intimately, and can connect with them.
Yeah, I appreciate that point, Tom, too, especially the thing you brought up about not looking past them in the sense of ignoring, but witnessing their experience and taking action to be in affirming and belonging community, and attending to access needs mutually is really important and beautiful. So I appreciate that, Tom. I'll pass it to Harshada and Darla. If you want to go, Harshada, first, feel free.
I have 2 suggestions for this question. The first one is specific to Hinduism. So everyone is very familiar with the concept of karma, but I think there needs to be more of an emphasis on dharma and duty, and for people to see another person as an extension of themselves and not someone different from them. And it's their duty to support that person. So that's specific to Hinduism. But I think for all traditions, a big thing that we should all be focusing on is disability, visibility. I feel like so many people just don't interact much with people with disability. They are just unaware, or maybe scared. And I think the only way to change people's attitudes and overturn the stigma against disability is to increase disability visibility. So I always tell this story that one time I was at the temple in my wheelchair, just sitting there, and a stranger came up to me. she sniffled and then kissed me on the cheek, and I was like, I didn't say anything at the time, but it was just really weird, and it kind of just reminded me how much I stand out and how much pity there is. But I feel like it's important for me to be there. It's important for people just to merely see me there, even though it may not be the most fun experience for me. I feel like it's important.
Enter mute.
I certainly concur with what my colleagues on the panel have said. I think I would add that I think it's critical for communities and the individuals who make up those communities, religious or otherwise, to be willing to confront their own ableism. And that is not always fun. It is rarely easy, but I don't think we're going to build inclusive, equitable, just communities until and unless we are able and willing to have really honest conversations about what ableism is, where it shows up. And by that, I mean where it shows up in sacred texts, scriptures, practices, rituals, sermons, practices, and own up to the ways in which we all perpetuate ableism. And it's not, I mean, it's similar in my mind to the types of conversations that a lot of institutions and organizations are having right now around race and racism. Certainly, there are many differences between ableism and racism, but there are also some intersections and overlaps. And so I think, affirming all members of a community is critical. I absolutely agree with Harshada. Disability visibility is essential, but I think we also have to be willing to have the hard conversations.
Thank you so much to both of you. Really, really important points. On that, we have a video from Imam Nadim Bashir. It is 15 minutes long, and I want to leave space for Q&A. So we're going to include that in the online folder with ITD Keith mentioned to me, so that'll be accessible to hear his perspectives on how faith communities are in practice around disability. If anyone, we probably don't need to go all five of us, but if anybody wants to share on the panel briefly before we do Q&A, so feel free to write those questions down or get them prepared for however you do it best. Has an experience they would like to share, or a story of inclusion and belonging in the faith community that they're talking on today? I know that we often hear a lot of really hard stories about exclusion. So if there's any examples that you feel would be worth uplifting and showing from a personal perspective, we'd be happy to hear that. And then we can move to Q&A after that.
Well, I have one story. Cece, this happened in our local church. Cece was an 8-year-old boy who was adopted from Child Protective Services and came from an abusive home and had some developmental delays. He was adopted by a single mom, and but when Cece would come to church, you never know what you were going to get. Sometimes he would come in a Spider-Man outfit. Other times he would wear his cowboy hat and boots that he got at the rodeo. Some days he would dress up in a black suit and black tie, and other times he would come. He would participate. Other times he might get too overstimulated and have to leave. Well, our church accepted him and knew that this was going to happen and loved him anyway. Sunday before Thanksgiving, our children's minister called all the kids down to the front to give the children's sermon. And the typical question, what are you thankful for? And all the kids gave an answer about what they were thankful for. Their moms, dads, pets, some toys and trips and everything. And Cece never said anything. So the children's minister asked him, Cece, what are you thankful for? And Cece stood up and he motioned to the congregation and said, I'm thankful for you. And so he knew that he was accepted and belonged, and just as he was, no matter what he did. And I think from the perspective of that little boy, he knew what it was to belong to a congregation and to a faith family.
Thank you, Tom. That's really beautiful. Any other stories anyone wants to share? Shelly looks like she's going for it.
Yeah. I just retired last year from being a bar and bat mitzvah tutor for 23 years. It was time. But during that time, I got to work with so many kids and families. And I never even, it's like nobody ever told me if a kid had a diagnosis or if I even was aware of a kid having a diagnosis. It didn't matter. There's a proverb, teach each child according to their ways. And so that's really how the education happened. This is a complex time. I'm sorry. Words are just having fun. And I had a student one year. His name was Chris. And Chris, when he was born like 4 months premature. And as a result, he survived. He had a variety of different medical conditions. The most apparent was that he was legally blind. And so Chris came into my tutoring room, and we just started talking, and I was trying to figure out, what's a great way to teach a kid, what typically, large print prayer book, Braille, didn't know Braille, couldn't really see the large print unless there was good lighting, and so we tried different ways. What's working for you? What do you think we should do? That's what I always asked him. So he was having some, just kind of moseying along, kind of learning, but not really learning much. And one day I said, Chris, tell me what you want for your bar mitzvah. What do you want for gifts? And he said, I want gift certificates to Target. So what are you going to get with those gift certificates to Target? He said, cleaning products. And I went, oh, okay, more information, please. I said, really, cleaning products? He said, yeah, I want cleaning products. I like to have cleaning products. And all of a sudden, I thought, oh, he's got a really strong interest in cleaning products. I wonder what else he has a strong interest in, and I wonder what other talents he has. So we started learning a verse of Torah in Hebrew, singing it. It's hard to learn. And Chris, I made a recording. He went home, came back the next week. I said, did you practice? He goes, oh, yeah. He said, I learned the whole thing you gave me, like verses and verses. He had a really strong musical memory. And it was through those kinds of connections that made this meaningful for him. It also turned out that he was subsequently diagnosed with autism. And after his bar mitzvah, he came up to me. He did an amazing, beautiful job. And he said, Shelly, this is the best day of my life. This is how you know. This is what reinforces belonging, is taking that time and ensuring that there's communication. It's not power over, it's power not. It's human being to human being.
Thanks for sharing that, Shelly. Darla, Harshada, if you got anything, no worries. Cool. Let's open it up to Q&A. And I don't know if we have a mic to pass around to folks. Keith's got you. Okay.
We also have a question online I can start
Oh,
with.
brilliant. Yeah. However we want to share the question, I don't know if I can read it to everybody.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so we have a question from Rebecca online, who asks, are there successful ways you can suggest to get faith communities to discuss these issues or face uncomfortable situations, bracket, when it is easier to make excuses or just keep the status quo?
That is a really good question. Give people a chance to munch on that on the panel, and feel free to chime in. Give a chance on folks online to chime in first if they want.
Just that, just from my own upbringing, youth groups would be a great place for discussions like this. And it's always good to start exploring these issues as young as you can.
Harshada. Oop, sorry, we got the feedback. Go ahead, Darla.
I was gonna say, I'm an educator by trade. So I certainly think, and these are perhaps some obvious suggestions, but I think reading guest speakers, community discussions, I certainly think that faith communities should and can learn from people with disabilities. But I also think that faith communities who are really serious about inclusion and access need to start those conversations long before a person with a disability asks them to do that. If this is, as I think, Shelly, you were talking about values earlier, if this is a genuine value in a faith community to be a welcoming, inclusive, accessible congregation or group, then start doing the work now, long before it's quote unquote needed, because probably if you start doing the work, you'll discover that there are already people there who can benefit from these kinds of conversations, even if they weren't apparent or obvious before.
Go ahead.
That's a really good point, Darla. And just kind of to piggyback on that a little bit, I think it's important to try as a congregation, no matter what denomination or faith you may be, to develop some type of theology of inclusion or a theology of disability, and have an understanding that our faith is inclusive, and have an understanding about that before you actually have to implement that. It's kind of hard to develop it if you're just kind of building the plane and flying it too. But it's really kind of to build a foundation and an understanding of what inclusion is and how it's not just what you do for kids. I mean, it happens throughout the congregation, from infants up to adults. It's kind of a way of life, and for congregations. So I think those are some things that need to be done in preparation, just having that understanding among your congregants and congregation.
You could start a movement.
Something called JDAME, is that what you're thinking?
So just a little bit about this movement. In 2009, 8 Jewish communities around the United States came together and said, why don't we pick a month out of the year and we just focus on disability inclusion? And you know, we can share programming, we can come up with ideas for programs and share them with all these communities, so nobody really has to think, you know, by themselves. And so what happened that first year is that these communities then brought in all of the congregations and really created a thing. Jewish Disability Awareness, Acceptance, and Inclusion Month in February. There's a reason for that. I'm not going to go into it here.
Holidays, Jewish holidays.
Yeah. And that was in 2009. The next year, Jewish Federations of North America said, hey, this could be a thing, and started Jewish Disability Advocacy Day on Capitol Hill in February. The following year, more and more communities participate, and now JDAME, starting the 15th year next February, is celebrated, recognized in Jewish communities around the world. So how did it happen? Purely grassroots, but it was really getting into congregations, getting into different variations of groups of Jewish people and saying, hey, these are the issues. Or if you really are talking inclusion, if you really want to be who you say you are, then enlist the people who you say you want to include as part of the community. And you know, I have mixed feelings about a whole month devoted to disability inclusion, but the truth is it's been a catalyst for the rest of the year. And there's just no reason why other faith groups, other faith communities can't do this in a way that's meaningful for their congregation. What it does, it raises awareness. And from raising awareness, now people who didn't know what they didn't even know start to know. So it's one way to go.
Thank you, Shelly. It was really cool joining the job during Jewish Disability Awareness and Inclusion Month. I got a crash course. My first day on the job, I actually got to meet Judy Human because she was speaking for JDAME. And I thought Shelly was making a really, really kind joke about like, yeah, you're gonna meet your disability hero. And I was like, no way. And she said, no, actually, you're meeting Judy Human. And I just fainted. It was such a joy. Of a blessed memory. Judy passed in February, so. We have 3 minutes left. If anybody in the audience has a question, be very happy to pass. Give it a quick pass. And also be mindful of your time. We got one right there.
Thank you, Shelly, for sharing about the resources within the Jewish community in JDAME. I was wondering if other people from other faith traditions had specific groups or resources or coalitions within your tradition that are maybe doing something similar or different.
Oh, there are a lot of organizations now doing the faith inclusion work. The one I'm part of, the Faith Inclusion Network, is an interfaith organization. So All Belong, Joni and Friends Key Ministry. If you go on our FIN website, we have links to all the different organizations that are doing the work in different parts of the country. And so when I first saw that, I was just amazed. I'm fairly new to to the faith and disability conversation. So, but there is a lot going on, and my guess is you can probably find one close to where you live, and you know, you can also find denominational supports as well. And again, we list a lot of those on the FIN website under resources. So it's out there. It takes a little bit of looking, but once you get connected, you're really connected. And I think you're in the right place to start that.
Shelly is also whispering to me, respectability is another place. No, you're good. We partner so much, including this panel. I think we forget that we're not the same organization, which is good. It's a good thing. It's really delightful. We do similar multi-faith inclusion work across the nation, and it's been a joy to partner with Tom in that work. And I will also say that I don't know if Harshada had any other contributions on that front, but if not, thank you all so much for being here. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you about this. And we hope you have a great rest of your conference, and we'll be around if you have more questions. And that's it. Thank you.